The information in this video comes from thorough research. Please share your thoughts on the video, Embracing the Cycle, a spiritual view on life and death in the comments. We'd love to hear what you think. Death is not the opposite of life, but a part of it. How we face it reveals how deeply we've lived. Haruki Murakami. Embracing the Cycle, a spiritual view on life and death. Since the beginning of humanity, death has persisted as an inevitable mystery. It surrounds birth, accompanies every moment of existence, and yet remains one of the deepest questions the human mind can ponder. Ancient civilizations erected monuments and developed sacred rituals not only to honor the dead, but also to understand what lies beyond the final breath. From different traditions, philosophers, priests, healers, and masters have searched for answers, often arriving at vastly different conclusions. Yet they all started from the same concern: where do we go when we leave the body? Some call this destination heaven, others hell, reincarnation, or even dissolution into the void. For many, death is an end. For others, it is merely a pause between two paragraphs of a much longer story. Among the oldest traditions of humanity, there's a silent truth that Helena Blavatsky articulated with clarity and depth. Death is not an end, but a transition. It is a shift in consciousness from the density of matter to the subtlety of higher planes. In this understanding, the soul does not cease to exist. It continues on another frequency, guided not by belief, but by universal laws. Blavatsky, the tireless seeker of esoteric wisdom, saw the human being as far more than flesh and thought. According to her, we are composed of multiple bodies: physical, etheric, emotional, mental, and spiritual, each vibrating on a different level. Death merely represents the release of the densest shell. What is real to us remains. This idea may seem strange or even unsettling to those raised within rigid paradigms, but it does not demand blind faith. It invites observation and inner listening. To acknowledge that within us exists something that does not age, fall ill, or follow the passage of time. Something that silently observes the flow of life, requires only stillness. This presence, ever constant even in solitude, is what we call soul, essence, or higher consciousness. When we realize that death is not an end, but part of a greater cycle leading us back to what truly matters, it ceases to be an enemy. Those who live with awareness die in peace, for they know that nothing ends, it only transforms. To the ordinary eye, death appears as a disruption. The body gives in, silence settles, and everything seems to come to an end. Yet what seems final is merely a change of state. Life does not reside in the body. The body is merely a vehicle for consciousness to move through the physical plane. When this vehicle ceases to function, it returns to its elements and consciousness moves on. In this sense, death is not the negation of life, but its continuation in another form. It is the soul's release from the limitations imposed by matter. With its needs, pains, desires, and restrictions, the body is like a garment the soul wears temporarily. When it becomes worn, useless, or no longer aligned with inner growth, it is left behind. Helena Blavatsky taught that humans are composed of 7 principles: the physical body, the etheric body, the emotional body, the lower and higher mental bodies, and the higher spiritual aspects. When we die, the physical body is the first to be discarded, but the other aspects continue to live, though in other realms of reality. Once the consciousness is freed from its denser shell, it begins a process of transition. This journey does not occur suddenly, but follows a subtle, silent order governed by universal laws, not by human will or knowledge. Just as birth follows rhythms beyond the mind's control, death obeys a broader wisdom. Immediately after physical death, consciousness remains tethered to the world through the etheric plane, a sort of energetic double of the body. But this plane dissolves quickly, leaving only what was built within: desires, thoughts, emotions, intentions. The soul then passes through a transitional realm known as Kama-Loka, a plane where earthly impulses, especially those tied to attachment, fear, anger, or pleasure, are purified. There, the soul begins the next stage of its journey. What is experienced after death is not punishment, but rather a process of purification. Those who cannot move on to higher planes naturally separate themselves. After this stage comes a state of rest and elevation known as Devachan. This is a period in which the soul, through its own symbolic language, experiences the fruits of all that was true, noble, and luminous in its existence. It is a state of inner peace, growth, and assimilation, remaining there as long as needed before embarking on a new journey. These stages are not physical locations, but rather levels of vibration, states of consciousness that manifest according to the inner frequency reached by the individual in life. Every soul gravitates toward what it resonates with, not by external judgment, but through natural attraction. Those who lived a superficial life, attached to fleeting pleasures or rigid materialism, may undergo a denser transitional experience, not as punishment, but due to their lack of connection with more subtle realms. On the other hand, those who developed inner silence, compassion, wisdom, and purpose pass on lightly, like someone returning home after a long journey. This perspective transforms our view of death. Rather than a tragedy, death becomes a necessary and natural process, just as essential as birth. The soul does not perish. It continues, breathes, and expands. Death does not interrupt life. It simply shifts its form. While the pain of loss is valid and deeply human, it often stems from a lack of knowledge about this process. We've been taught to fear the unknown, yet told very little about the continuity of existence. When we reconnect with ancestral wisdom, we realize that nothing truly disappears. Everything transforms. What appears to be an ending is, in truth, a transition. Thus, death becomes a return, a liberation of form, a re-encounter with dimensions veiled by physical senses, and the beginning of a new phase of being, more subtle, more profound, and more real. The traditional image of post-mortem judgment often depicts divine courts, gods with scales, angels recording deeds, and a final irrevocable verdict. But in the esoteric vision shared by Helena Blavatsky, this judgment is nothing like an external tribunal. It happens inwardly, intimately, and silently, like the soul gazing at itself in a perfectly honest mirror that reflects not just actions, but the intentions, emotions, and true essence behind every choice made in life. When consciousness detaches from the physical body, it doesn't just survive, it expands. Freed from the constraints of the senses and the distractions of the material world, it begins to see more clearly. And this new gaze turns inward. In that moment, there can be no mistakes, no masks, no convincing justifications. Only what is real remains. According to esoteric tradition, this review process unfolds spontaneously. The soul revisits its earthly orbit in depth. But this isn't a cold analysis. It's a deeply emotional and vibrational experience. The soul re-feels every action, every word, and every thought, but now from the perspective of those affected by them. If one caused pain with harsh words, they experience that pain. If one offered comfort, they feel the peace they brought. Every choice returns not as a judgment from outside, but as a vibrational echo. This is the true weight of karma, not punishment, but a natural consequence. Like a sound returning to the one who emitted it. There is no throne, no condemning voice, no arbitrary penalty, only the clarity of the soul facing itself. And often, in this encounter, what must be transformed becomes evident. The soul is not condemned, it recognizes itself. And this recognition awakens a desire for rebalancing. Blavatsky taught that karma is not a punishing force, but a law of harmony. Everything in the universe seeks balance. When an action creates imbalance, the soul itself attracts the experiences that will restore that harmony. This is the foundation of spiritual justice. Humanity reaps what it sows, not as retribution, but as an opportunity for learning. This inner judgment also reveals what is essential within us. That which was built on selfishness, pride, or vanity crumbles, for it has no enduring substance. Only true feelings, selfless acts, and noble thoughts endure. Upon this foundation, the soul continues its journey through subtle realms and, if necessary, returns to the material world to further its growth. This moment of clarity may last a short or long time, depending on the level of consciousness the soul developed in life. For some, it is enlightening and serene. For others, intense and unsettling. But in every case, it is profoundly transformative. What's crucial to understand is that belief is not required for this process to unfold. It transcends religious affiliations, personal convictions, or cultural backgrounds. It is governed by universal, cosmic laws. Eden is a vibrational reality. Conscience is not a human invention. It is a natural result of existence. That's why living with attention, integrity, and presence becomes a quiet preparation for this moment. Every act done in truth will echo like light in that mirror. Every choice made with awareness strengthens our connection to the more subtle realms of being. Death does not end the process of growth. Rather, it intensifies it. The first step in this new phase is the soul's reunion with itself, cleansed of the illusions of the sensory world. True transformation begins with this encounter, not something imposed from the outside, but something chosen from within. Therefore, judgment is not an act that awaits us, but a revelation that reaches us. It is the opportunity to see what we could not always perceive in life through the eyes of the soul. And in this vision, the soul realizes that there is still a path to walk, not for punishment, but because of the love it holds for the light it can manifest. Death is far from the end of existence. It is merely a pause in the soul's journey. There is no interruption, no void, only continuity. After passing through subtle planes, resting, and absorbing its experiences, consciousness prepares for a new cycle. The return to the world of form, the realm of experience, the school of time and matter. This return is what ancient traditions called reincarnation. According to esoteric philosophy, this is not a belief, but a natural law of evolution. The soul is not created in a single moment, nor does it fulfill its purpose in a single lifetime. It is ancient, vast, and constantly evolving. Each existence is a phase in this process, a chance to understand, to purify, and to grow. Helena Blavatsky taught that reincarnation is a necessity for the soul. When, after death, it reviews its trajectory, it recognizes the lessons still incomplete. It is the call of its own conscience. The soul wants to return, not out of obligation, but because it sees the need to restore harmony, to heal connections, and to develop virtues. Nothing is lost between one life and another. Lessons learned, tendencies, deepest longings, even if not consciously remembered, are carried forward. Innate tendencies, natural talents, spontaneous affinities towards certain people or places. These are the subtle marks of past experiences, signs left along the soul's long journey. In this light, life is not random. The conditions into which we are born, our family, environment, body, and challenges, are not coincidences, but consequences of choices made in previous existences. The soul is not a victim of chance, but heir to its own legacy. What it reaps is what it has sown, and what it sows will shape what it reaps. Yet, this cycle is neither mechanical nor cruel. It is a wise cycle. The universe does not punish, it teaches. It does not repeat for revenge, but to present again what was not yet understood. If someone squandered a chance to love, they will receive another opportunity to open their heart. If they misused power, they will learn again how to serve. Every situation is a chance for transformation. The time between one life and another varies, not measured in days or years, but in states of consciousness. The soul returns not because the clock ticks, but because it is ready. After resting in subtle realms, it is drawn back to matter by vibrational affinity, like a river finding its way back to the sea. There is deep justice in this process. Contrary to views that attribute fate to external forces, reincarnation reveals that every being is responsible for their own path. There are no favorites or forgotten ones. Each returns based on what they have built. Most importantly, they return with the chance to do things differently. Reincarnation also reveals the interconnectedness of all beings. Those with whom we share deep bonds often reappear in our lives. Souls seek, attract, and recognize each other. Bonds of love, debt, or learning lead to necessary reunions. The same story can unfold over centuries until harmony is restored through love, forgiveness, or separation. Understanding this cycle changes the way we live. If everything we do stays with us, if the person we hurt today may return tomorrow as our child, sibling, or companion, then the wisest path is clearly one of awareness, empathy, and responsibility. From the lens of eternity, nothing is small. Every word, every choice, every gesture is a seed, and the soil it grows in may be this life or the next. The soul, in its silent walk, uses everything in its ascent. The goal of reincarnation is not endless return, not to walk in circles, but to spiral upward. Every life offers new possibilities, and even mistakes, once understood, become stepping stones. There is no fall that cannot be reversed, no shadow that cannot be illuminated. Reincarnation is proof of divine patience, of the universe's faith in humanity. No matter how long the journey, all souls are moving toward the light. When the physical body ceases to function, it is not just matter that dissolves. Leaving the body marks the beginning of an inner journey governed by universal laws. Consciousness, freed from dense form, does not fall into a void. It continues through more subtle dimensions, guided by its own vibration. The esoteric tradition teaches that reality is not limited to the physical world. There are layers of manifestation that cannot be seen with ordinary senses, but are accessible to the soul. These layers are states of consciousness, vibrational levels that align with the material plane. After death, the soul moves through these stages, each reflecting what was cultivated in life. The first is the etheric plane, tied to the life force that sustained the body. This stage represents the final separation from earthly life, a gentle transition between the physical and the psychic. Next, the soul enters the realm known as Kama-Loka, a term from Eastern philosophy describing a space where unrefined desires and passions are confronted. This is not a place of punishment, but of purification. Here, the soul faces whatever still binds it to the material world: bad habits, obsessions, pride, fear. Everything not belonging to higher planes becomes visible and slowly dissolves. How long this takes depends not on an external will, but on the soul's own inner state. If deeply entangled in strong emotions, liberation takes longer. On the other hand, if the soul has cultivated detachment, service, humility, and discernment, it passes more smoothly. In Kama-Loka, the soul is not held by an external force, but by the vibrational pull of what it still carries within. After Kama-Loka, consciousness reaches Devachan, a realm of rest, integration, and elevation. Devachan is not a fixed paradise, but a state of consciousness tailored to the soul's level of development. Each soul experiences the harvest of its purest thoughts, highest ideals, and truest intentions. It is a phase of rebalancing, free from the limits and sufferings of the physical world. In this state, time, as we know it, does not exist. The soul lives in a kind of relative eternity where experience is measured not in minutes or days, but in intensity. Devachan is the interval between incarnations, a time of renewal, a preparation for the next cycle. These planes are not defined locations, they are vibrational states. The soul is not sent to them. It is drawn to them according to what it is built within. The similarity between the soul state and each plane's vibration determines this. So the afterlife is just as personal as the life lived. Each being undergoes a unique journey, deeply aligned with its own path. Helena Blavatsky emphasized that these stages are as real as the physical world. The difference lies in their subtlety. While the human body needs contact, weight, and form to perceive, the soul perceives through intuition, vibration, and direct integration. In these planes, consciousness does not see with eyes, but understands through presence. It does not hear sounds, but recognizes impressions. It is a wider, quieter, and more truthful perception. Understanding this transition changes how we view death. Instead of imagining a chasm between life and the unknown, one sees a continuous, sensitive, and spiritual journey. The planes the soul passes through are not judgment, but transformation. Each plays a role. Each purifies, reveals, and elevates. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is punishment. Everything is a path. And the soul, on that path, comes to understand the value of every thought, every intention, every action taken during earthly life. What once seemed small gains depth. What once seemed pointless is revealed to have been essential. Because when the soul crosses the subtle planes, it carries no possessions, no titles, no appearances, only what it has built in silence. Only its inner truth. Speaking of death is still a taboo for many, as if avoiding the word might delay its arrival. It's common to try to escape or suppress it in our minds. But true wisdom is not built on avoidance, but on understanding. And to understand death is, above all, to understand life. The way we live silently prepares the way we will cross the threshold of physical existence. Every thought, every emotion nurtured, every choice leaves an imprint in the invisible realm of consciousness. These subtle and lasting impressions shape what the soul encounters after departure. Helena Blavatsky taught that the soul is not separate from daily life. It is present in every act, even the simplest. The quality of our days directly reflects the quality of our transition. What we build within is what will sustain us beyond matter. To live with awareness is to prepare, not for an end, but for a sacred continuation. To prepare for death does not mean to withdraw or abandon earthly duties. Rather, it means to be fully present in every experience, to deeply notice the ordinary, and to transform every moment into a space for learning and inner purification. The preparation for death begins not at the end of life, but in the daily decisions we make, in our relationships with others, with ourselves, and with time. In this sense, death is not an abrupt interruption, but a natural conclusion to a life well lived. If someone has been attached to material possessions, wealth, or outward show, it is natural that they would struggle to let go of what they consider indispensable. However, if these individuals have cultivated inner clarity and a connection to the transcendental, the journey will be smoother, clearer, and more serene. This preparation does not require extreme renunciations or dramatic gestures. It reveals itself in simplicity. It manifests in the silence developed each day, in the practice of true listening, in the willingness to forgive, in being grateful for what we have, and in accepting what cannot be changed. Every virtue cultivated in life is like a light burning within the soul, guiding it when the body's eyes are closed. Blavatsky also emphasized the importance of discernment. To prepare for death is not to live in fear, but to live with contemplation. It is the ability to discern between the transient and the eternal, between desire and essence. It is to let go of the distractions that lead us away from our purpose and to seek out that which nourishes our being, though it may be invisible. Inner peace, high thought, and silent compassion are the true treasures of the soul. Unlike external material successes, these virtues remain with us as we pass through the gates of existence. Unlike external achievements which cannot be carried with us, there is another often overlooked factor: closeness through silence. We live in a world full of noise and distractions, where silence is feared, but the soul reveals itself in silence. Connection with higher planes strengthens in silence. Those who learn to quiet the voice of ego in life will find it easier to recognize the subtle voices of spiritual existence after death. Meditation, contemplation, careful observation of nature, and the study of eternal truths, these nourish the soul. They not only expand consciousness but refine it, making it open to higher planes beyond physical experience. When this happens, life transforms from a mere survival space to a temple. Every relationship becomes an opportunity for evolution. Every obstacle, a disguised teacher, and every moment a chance for a great transformation. With this vision, death loses its terrifying aspect and becomes a natural transition, the consistent continuation of a life well lived. When we understand that existence does not stop, there is no reason to fear. The soul is not thrown into random fate. It is guided by what it has built within itself. Thus, preparing for death is, above all, living authentically. It lies in knowing that real security does not come from what we have, but from who we are, as we realize that our essence is the singular, unified consciousness. Throughout life, each person wears different layers of identity: name, profession, appearance, social roles, and the ideas they have constructed about themselves. Yet when death arrives, all these layers begin to fall away. The body, which has served as a reference point for so long, disintegrates. Names lose their value, and external achievements do not accompany the soul. Nothing external can be taken. What remains is what has been built in the depths of consciousness. At that moment, truth emerges. The soul sees itself without masks, without disguises, and without the artifices of the ego. Death reveals existence as it truly is, free of the transient embellishments of personality. The nature of this encounter depends on how closely one has lived in alignment with their true essence. It can be a liberating or deeply unsettling revelation. Helena Blavatsky taught that humans are composed of different principles. The material world and the lower aspects of life eventually dissolve, but the higher aspects connected to the spirit and mind continue. In this context, death is a turning point, distinguishing the transient from the eternal. Only the superficial vanishes. What has been genuinely lived remains as the essence of consciousness. Throughout life, people often identify with their emotions, beliefs, and desires, yet these are merely aspects of the earthly experience and do not define their essence. When the soul is freed from the body, it is also freed from these filters and can reflect clearly upon who it is, what it has done, and what it carries within. This revelation is not a punishment or a penalty, but an inevitable vision. Freed from the illusions that once trapped it, the soul faces what it has truly built and recognizes its value or emptiness. This is why inner work is so crucial. Looking good is not enough. Displaying virtues or fulfilling formalities is not enough. What will emerge after death is the vibrational reality of being. Not just the represented, but the integrated aspects, intentions, deepest thoughts, silent emotions. All these elements form the inner landscape of the soul, which will reveal itself with complete clarity. This revelation may bring pain, especially if there is a great distance between what one has lived and what they could have lived, between what was neglected due to comfort and what was prioritized due to fear. However, it can also mark the beginning of a new understanding and maturation. Death does not punish, it illuminates, and in the light, everything reveals itself as it truly is. In this moment, many illusions are also dissolved. What was feared in life may prove to be illusory, while what was despised may reveal its true value. Relationships, attitudes, ideas, everything is reevaluated with new eyes. The soul becomes aware of what it has built and what it has wasted time on. This realization brings about results, not through force, but through consistency. Thus, death is not merely the end of a cycle. It is a great mirror, the final reflection of whether life was lived authentically or not. The soul does not gain anything from death. It merely reveals what was already there. This is why living with awareness is the only way to make this encounter serene. According to Blavatsky, spiritual salvation can only occur when humanity begins to recognize its true nature. This nature lies not in the desires of the ego or transient thoughts, but in the silent presence that observes everything. This presence endures even as time passes and everything around it changes. This awareness is what the soul rediscovers after death. And as it rediscovers it, it always remembers who it is. Therefore, death is neither punishment nor threat. It is the revelation of what life has been trying to teach, but often overlooks. In this revelation, the soul can finally make a clear choice to continue its development, to begin again with more wisdom, or to rest for a time in the light of what it has understood. True existence does not arise after death. It was always there, but becomes visible when the illusions of the external world fade away. Over eons, the soul travels a vast path. It lives, dies, returns, learns, forgets, and begins again, acquiring something new with each existence. This journey is not a meaningless repetition, but an ascent, a spiral movement towards the origin of being. Blavatsky taught that the true nature of the soul is divine. It is neither created at birth nor destroyed at death. It is a spark of the universal principle, a part of the cosmic consciousness that permeates all beings. The soul experiences the illusion of individuality only so it can eventually develop the perception of its unity with the whole. The ultimate destination of the soul is not a place, not an eternal resting place, but a state of consciousness so vast and illuminated that it transcends the limits of form and language, a reuniting with the Absolute. For most people, this state is not attained in a single lifetime. The soul must mature, experience opposites, face duality, understand pain, practice love, and develop the ability to discern. Matter serves as a field of learning. Time is an opportunity for evolution, and suffering often serves as a catalyst for awakening. During this process, the soul frees itself from the illusions that trap it in lower cycles: attachment to identity, fear of loss, the need for control. In their place, a subtler, quieter, and clearer consciousness emerges, one that no longer sees itself as separate, but as part of a larger, living organism, the universe. To merge with it is not to dissolve, but to expand. The drop does not disappear in the ocean. It recognizes itself as the ocean. The individual self does not vanish, but transforms into something greater. The awakened soul no longer asks, "Who am I?" It thinks, "I am." This state, often called liberation, enlightenment, or nirvana, is not the privilege of a few. It is the destiny of every consciousness. Even the most dormant souls will one day reach it. Those who have strayed from the path, those who have fallen or forgotten themselves, will also find their way back. The universe does not abandon any of its parts. It patiently guides each being to awaken, to learn, and to return, offering countless opportunities to do so. And while time may seem long from a human perspective, it is but a thin thread in the face of eternity. When the soul reaches this state of unity, it no longer needs earthly experiences. It no longer needs to return. It has understood the cycle, transcended desire, ignorance, and separation. It is inherently free. But this freedom is not isolation. It is unity. The liberated soul may move in a different way, becoming a guide, a teacher, an inspiration for others on the same path. Remaining in subtler planes, it spreads understanding and harmony. Its existence does not end, only its function changes. Blavatsky taught that the highest aim of spiritual evolution is not to accumulate power, but to re-establish unity. When the soul merges with the whole, it does not lose its hard-earned individuality. It offers it as a living contribution to the greater good. This is the pinnacle of the journey, when I becomes we and we dissolves in one. This transformation is neither forced nor hastened. Each soul walks at its own pace, with its own struggles and successes. But all walk, and one day, all will reach the state where no question, no suffering, no need to prove anything remains. At that point, conflict ceases, effort ceases, and only the light of pure consciousness remains. This is the ultimate destination of the soul, not an end, but an eternal revelation of what it has always been. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you have any experiences related to this topic, be sure to share them with us. Until the next episode, be mindful of the energies around you.